What's up everyone? Welcome to Talk Verde to Me, and today I have a shoe review with what has become one of my favorite shoes of all time, the Adidas Terrex Agravic Speed. So the Agravic Speed falls into my favorite category of trail shoes, and that's a lightweight, no plates, nimble but high cushioned trail shoe. A little bit of a specific category, but definitely my favorite to run in. In terms of stats and I guess overall breakdown of the Speed Ultra, just the Speed. It has a 34 millimeter stack height in the heel, 26 in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. And that, once was considered pretty high stack for a trail shoe, but, these days is pretty average, pretty moderate. The upper of this shoe is very lightweight. It's a lightweight mesh and is pretty breathable. If you've ever run in a shoe with like a Matrix upper, I honestly think this is pretty similar. Very minimal, basically no heel padding. The mesh is like a little bit rough, a little abrasive, and for that reason I do worry about blistering a little bit on like really long runs. But when I've run in it, it's been pretty comfortable so far and drains really well. It doesn't hold any water, which is a great plus. Then the outsole of this shoe is a full Continental rubber outsole. I guess, quick side note, I love when shoes have full length rubber. I know that it adds weight, but I've had too many times where like I step down a rock in the midfoot where there's like, exposed midsole, and I like slip on that because there's no rubber. So I think that's a big bonus for this shoe. Shoe also, the Continental rubber grips amazing. I've run in a couple of Adidas shoes before on the trails that have Continental rubber, and it's honestly like probably the best rubber I've had, like on par with Vibram, just as good as Vibram. So I did one 22-mile long run in this on the Appalachian Trail here in New Hampshire, with 6,000 feet of vertical gain, and it was in the rain on decently rocky terrain, and I fully trusted this on like, pretty slick granite downslopes. Yeah, it gripped really well. For the actual stats, lugs are 4 millimeters in the heel and 3 millimeters in the forefoot. And that's a little shallow. I would have maybe liked to see 5 millimeter lugs on these. However, this shoe retains pretty decent road running ability. I guess quick comparison, I had the predecessor of this shoe is the Adidas Terrex Speed Ultra, the original one. Some people didn't like this shoe because it's very minimal. Almost feels like you're running like, barefoot-esque. But I actually really enjoyed it for a certain circumstance, and that was road to trail shoe, where I didn't want to compromise my trail running ability because the lugs were so small on this shoe. I also felt like I could really run fast on roads and trails. It's basically like an Adidas Boston 9, but for the trails. And the new Agravic Speed has retained that road running ability and that responsiveness. Just basically does the same thing, but much better because it increases the stack height, so it no longer has that minimal barefoot feel, which I don't want on every run. And that sort of transitions to midsole pretty well, where we have a dual density midsole. On the bottom we have Lightstrike Pro, which is Adidas's super foam. It's not a Pebax or Pebax, but it's a supercritical foam, I believe. It might be a supercritical Peba. However, it's one of my favorite foams ever. I had the Adios Pro 2, and that is still my favorite foam and like outsole unit that I've ever run in. So that's awesome. And then it has just basic Lightstrike EVA on top, Lightstrike 2.0, I believe, to add some stability. It comes up a little bit on the sidewalls in like a bathtub construction, almost like guide rails. That does increase stability and helps me feel more locked down. But yeah, this midsole feels pretty bouncy and responsive. So yeah, I'll get to cons a little bit with this shoe, because pros are it's nimble, it's responsive, it's lightweight, it's cushioned, it's everything I want, except for a couple just like really small details. It's one I've already addressed a little bit, is the upper is pretty minimal and abrasive, leads to the lightweight and what I think will be a pretty durable upper, but it's not like all-day comfort that I might want. So that's one con. Another con is the sizing. So Adidas released a new like 3 shoe lineup for their Terex lineup, the Agravic 3, which is their like daily trainer, all EVA, more longer lugs. The Agravic Speed, which is this shoe and is sort of like their up-tempo trail shoe and also more mountainous trail shoe. I actually saw that, Western States is today, as I'm filming this, in the High Country, Peter Engel switched from the Speed Ultra, which is their super shoe, high stack, very high performing shoe. However, he was like twisting his ankle in the High Country and actually switched this shoe, which I think is pretty interesting and show that, this has some applications even for the pros in more mountainous terrain. With this shoe and the Speed Ultra, people have consistently had sizing issues where they run quite large. Now, I am normally a men's 8, and I ended up getting a women's 9.5 because the women's shoe is on sale for $64 for a little bit on the Adidas website. It's normally $160, so I got a pretty sick steal for that. Women's 9.5 is supposed to be the same length of a men's 8, just a little bit narrower. And I'd say that it fits me pretty well. Width is perfect, and it is a little bit long. And so for that reason, if I got a men's size, I would get a 7.5. I'd size down half a size in this shoe. I can't speak to the Speed Ultra. I don't have that shoe. I haven't shelled out the $220 to buy it. But I'd recommend for this Agravic Speed to size down half a size. Now my last con for this shoe is actually a carryover con for the original, the Speed Ultra, and that is the heel width. Both have a pretty narrow heel, and that can lead to ankle rolling. It's just sort of a big stability problem for me. The forefoot on this shoe is actually pretty wide. That's been improved, but still the heel is narrow, and I did roll my ankles once or twice. Could also be due to the shoe being a little long, not getting quite as good lockdown. And I guess my last con is the lockdown a little bit. You can get great lockdown in this shoe. However, because the tongue is so thin, it can lead to lace bite a little bit, which is another reason why it might get uncomfortable for a really long run. But I think that if I got this shoe in a men's 7.5 and, it fit my foot like a glove, this would be an amazing mountain racing shoe, or just trail racing shoe in general. I'd be happy to take it on anything under, like 50K and under. It also is very lightweight. I think it's like 8.5 ounces in a men's 9, which for a trail shoe is really light. It's lighter than the super shoe that they made. So that's another use case is, if you want to go really fast. And honestly, like between full super foam and lighter weight by an ounce, running economy benefits might be pretty similar. So now I'm going to get into comparisons for the shoe a little bit. Like I said, it's in this category of sort of lightweight but decently cushioned but nimble trail running shoes. And that is my favorite category of shoes. I already compared it to the original Speed Ultra a little bit that it's most similar to. And I think it's a huge upgrade over the Speed Ultra. Retains all of the pros, but gets rid of cons with higher cushion and more responsive. So that's great. I think the shoe that this is most similar to and has been my favorite trail shoe of all time is the Hoka Torrent 2, which I don't have. It's actually the only shoe I've ever gotten rid of that I sort of regret getting rid of. I donate all my old shoes to Goodwill. The Torrent 2 was lightweight, pretty well cushioned, and that's the shoe that I fell in love with trail running into, so it holds a soft spot in my heart. This shoe has better grip, full Continental rubber outsole, better than Hoka's like in-house rubber, and also has a more responsive midsole and a lighter upper, however, a less comfortable upper. But overall, I think I would take this over the Torrent 2, which means this might be my favorite trail shoe of all time. Other shoes that I would compare this to, I think in a pretty similar category to the Topo Mountain Racer. This is the Mountain Racer 2. This is another shoe I was considering for the Jigger Johnson 50 mile. Full rubber Vibram, pretty comparable to the outsole on the Agravic Speed, but slightly larger lugs. Similar weight. This is a little bit heavier, and also the outsole, the midsole is a lot less soft and responsive. So for those reasons, I'd also go for the Agravic Speed over the shoe. But the upper is so comfortable on the Topo Mountain Racer too. That's why I was considering this over the Agravic Speed. And I think the last interesting comparison I have from what I've run in is the Hoka Tecton X 1s. I got these shoes recently on sale now that the Tecton X2s are getting old and the 3s will be coming out soon. But these shoes are actually very similar in my opinion. You have responsive midsoles, lightweight uppers, and pretty sticky outsoles with lower profile lugs in general. And yeah, the main difference between these shoes is the Tecton X has dual carbon fiber plates versus no plates in the Speed Ultra. I think that leads to the Agravic Speed being bouncier with the Lightstrike Pro midsole and having what seems like pretty similar stack heights. However, it feels softer because there's no plate. The plates in the Tecton can make it feel a little firm sometimes. However, the upper on the Tecton is much more forgiving, much softer. That's why I'm actually going to be racing the Jigger Johnson 50 mile in the Tecton X. Mostly because of that upper, and I really value foot comfort in longer ultras. I've been trying to think of situations where I'd race in the Agravic Speed over the Tecton. I think that maybe in more mountainous terrain. I really don't know. It's a tough one for me. I really love Agravic Speed, but I think it might fall into more of the category of training shoe. I think that in all my mountain tempos, I'll be reaching for the Agravic Speed, and then I'll be looking to race most of my races in the Tecton X. And I think that the main quiver that Adidas wants you to have is the Agravic Speed, and then race in the Speed Ultra. However, I've heard that the Speed Ultra is a lot more unstable than the Tecton X, but faster. Yeah, and so that kind of wraps up my review and comparisons of the Adidas Agravic Speed. I really love this shoe. It's one of my favorites. I think that it can do slow hiking in the mountains. I think it can do really fast running on buffed out trails. I think it's extremely versatile, and it can even handle roads pretty well.